The small town of Ridgewood was quiet, the kind of place where nothing ever seemed to happen. It was nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, far away from the noise and chaos of big cities. People here lived simple lives, waking up early, working hard, and ending their days with a warm meal and good company. Lavra Bennett had grown up in this town, but she wasn't like everyone else. While most people in Ridgewood were farmers or shopkeepers, Lavra spent her days studying the stars. She worked as an astrophysicist for a lesser-known branch of NASA, stationed at a research facility just outside town. Lavra loved her job. Every day she scanned the skies, searching for anything unusual signals, patterns, or objects that didn't belong. Most of the time it was boring work, full of static and dead ends. But one evening, something changed. As Lavra sat in front of her computer, sipping coffee and reviewing data from the latest scans, she noticed something strange. A series of faint signals appeared on her screen, coming from deep space. At first, she thought it might be interference, caused by solar flares or faulty equipment, so she decided to double-check the readings. Ryan Carter, her colleague and closest friend at the facility, walked into the room just as Lavra was about to dismiss the signals. Ryan was younger than Lavra, with a quick mind and a knack for solving problems. He often joked that he was the tech wizard of the team, but Lavra knew he was much more than that. When she showed him the data, his eyes lit up with curiosity. "Let me take a look," he said, pulling up a chair beside her. Together, they cross-referenced the signals with older records and realized something alarming. The signals weren't random noise. They were coming from a fleet of unidentified objects moving toward Earth at incredible speeds. At first, Lavra tried to stay calm. Maybe it was a natural phenomenon, she told herself. Or perhaps it was a rogue asteroid cluster. But as the hours passed, the truth became impossible to ignore. The objects were too large, too organized, and too fast to be anything natural. By morning, Lavra and Ryan had pieced together enough evidence to confirm their worst fears. Earth was not alone in the universe, and whatever was coming wasn't friendly. News of the discovery spread quickly through the facility. Panic set in among the scientists and staff. Some argued that they should contact world leaders immediately, while others insisted on gathering more data before jumping to conclusions. Lavra wanted to believe there was still hope for peaceful contact, but deep down, she felt a growing sense of dread. Her instincts told her that humanity was about to face something it wasn't prepared for. As the days turned into weeks, the situation escalated. Governments around the world began scrambling to prepare for the unknown. Military forces were put on high alert, and emergency broadcasts urged citizens to stay calm. In Ridgewood, life went on as usual, at least for a little while. People talked about the news over dinner, speculating about what the mysterious objects might be. Some thought it was a hoax, while others believed it was proof of extraterrestrial life. No one imagined how quickly their lives would change. Then, without warning, the sky lit up with fire. Massive ships descended from orbit, unleashing devastating energy weapons on major cities across the globe. The attacks were swift and merciless, leaving billions dead within hours. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to rubble, and communication networks collapsed under the strain. Chaos erupted everywhere as survivors fled in terror, searching for safety in a world that no longer made sense. In Ridgewood, the attack came suddenly. Laura and Ryan were still at the facility when the first wave hit. They heard the distant rumble of explosions and saw flashes of light on the horizon. For a moment, they froze, unsure of what to do. And Ryan grabbed Laura's arm and pulled her toward the exit. "We need to get out of here," he shouted over the noise. Outside, the air was thick with smoke, and the ground shook beneath their feet. Cars sped past them, horns blaring as people tried desperately to escape. Laura's mind raced as they ran toward her car. She thought about her family, her parents, who lived in a small house near the edge of town, and her younger brother, who was visiting from college. Were they safe? Had they made it out in time? She pushed the thoughts aside, focusing instead on survival. If she could just reach her parents' house, maybe they could figure out a plan together. The drive through town was surreal. Streets that had once been bustling with activity were now eerily empty, littered with abandoned vehicles and debris. Fires burned in the distance, casting an orange glow over the landscape. Lavra gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white, as Ryan kept watch for any signs of danger. They reached her parents' house just as another explosion rocked the area, sending shockwaves through the air. Inside, Lavra found her family huddled together in the basement. Her mother was crying softly, while her father tried to comfort her. Her brother, Alex, looked pale but determined. "What's happening?" he asked when he saw Lavra and Ryan. She didn't have an answer, only fragments of information gathered from panicked radio broadcasts. All she knew was that Earth was under attack, and humanity was losing. As the hours passed, the group listened to updates from surviving broadcasters. World leaders pleaded for calm, assuring everyone that efforts were being made to communicate. "With the invaders, we seek only peace," one official repeated over and over again. But Lavra knew better. This wasn't peace, it was extermination. The aliens, whoever they were, viewed humans as nothing more than obstacles in their path. By morning, Ridgewood was a ghost town. Survivors banded together in makeshift shelters, sharing food and supplies. Laura and her family joined a group, led by Chris Dawson, a former Marine who had returned to Ridgewood after serving overseas. His sister Mia was also part of the group. She was quieter than Chris, but equally resourceful, with a talent for fixing things. Together, they began, fortifying their shelter, preparing for whatever came next. Despite the devastation, Lavra refused to give up hope. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to learn about their attackers, if only she could find a way to study them. Deep down, she believed that understanding the enemy was key to fighting back. But for now, all she could do was survive. And as she looked around at the faces of those who remained, the frightened, the injured, the determined, she realized that humanity wasn't beaten yet. Not by a long shot. This was what happened when you enrage humans. They didn't crumble. They adapted. They fought. And if history had taught her anything, it was that humans were capable of incredible resilience in the face of impossible odds. Whatever came next, Lavra vowed to stand her ground, because giving up wasn't an option, not for her, and not for anyone else who still drew breath. The days that followed the attack were a blur of fear and exhaustion. In Ridgewood, the survivors worked tirelessly to secure their shelter and gather supplies. Lavra spent most of her time thinking about the aliens, trying to piece together why they had attacked and what they wanted. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to their arrival than random destruction. Every moment she wasn't helping with physical tasks, she was poring over old data or sketching out theories in a worn notebook. Ryan stayed by her side, offering support and occasionally pointing out flaws in her logic. "We can't just sit here and think forever," he said one evening as they sat together in the dim light of a lantern. "We need to do something." Chris Dawson, the former Marine leading their group, had other ideas. He was focused on turning the survivors into a fighting force. Every morning, he gathered everyone who was able-bodied and began training them in basic combat skills. At first, many resisted. Some were too scared, others too tired, and a few simply didn't believe they stood a chance against the invaders. But Chris was relentless. "If we don't fight back, we're dead anyway," he told them during one particularly grueling session. His words carried weight, especially when paired with his no-nonsense demeanor. Slowly but surely, people started to listen. Mia, Chris's sister, played a different role in the group. While her brother trained fighters, she worked on salvaging and repurposing technology from abandoned homes and vehicles. Her hands moved quickly as she dismantled broken gadgets, rewiring them into tools the group could use. One afternoon, she managed to rig up a crude communication device using parts from an old radio and a car battery. Though it only worked sporadically, it gave the group a lifeline to other survivors scattered across the region. The messages they received painted a grim picture. Cities were in ruins, governments had collapsed, and millions were dead. But amid the despair, there were also stories of resistance, small groups banding together to strike back against the invaders. Tensions within the group began to rise as debates erupted over how best to retaliate. Some argued for guerrilla tactics, striking quickly and retreating before the aliens could respond. Others believed humanity needed to pool its resources to build a single massive weapon capable of crippling the alien fleet. Lavra listened to these discussions quietly, her mind racing with possibilities. She knew that brute force alone wouldn't be enough. They needed intelligence, a way to understand their enemy and exploit any weaknesses. Finally, during one heated argument, she spoke up. "What if we try to communicate with them?" she suggested. The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at her. "Not to beg for peace," she added quickly, "but to learn. If we can decode their signals, we might find a way to turn this around." Her idea was met with skepticism. Many doubted it would work, and some outright dismissed it as a waste of time. Chris, however, surprised her by nodding thoughtfully. "It's risky," he admitted, "but we don't have a lot of options. If you think you can pull it off, I'll give you a week. After that, we move forward with whatever plan we've got." Lavra felt a surge of gratitude and pressure. She knew the clock was ticking, and failure wasn't an option. With Ryan's help, Lavra set up a makeshift lab in a corner of the shelter. They scavenged equipment from the research facility where they had worked before the attack, carrying everything they could salvage back to Ridgewood under the cover of darkness. It wasn't much: a cracked monitor, a damaged satellite dish, and a handful of cables, but it was enough to get started. As they worked, Lavra explained her plan to anyone who would listen. "The aliens are communicating with each other somehow," she said. "If we can intercept those signals and decipher them, we might figure out what they're planning next. Maybe even find a way to disrupt their systems." Days turned into nights as Lavra and Ryan poured all their energy into the project. Progress was slow and frustrating, but they refused to give up. Meanwhile, Chris continued preparing the group for battle. He divided them into teams, assigning roles based on each person's strengths. Jake Monroe, a quiet man with sharp eyes and steady hands, became the group's designated sniper. Alex, Laura's younger brother, proved surprisingly adept at navigating the forest surrounding Ridgewood, making him invaluable for scouting missions. Even Mia found herself pulled into the preparations, teaching others how to handle weapons and repair damaged gear. As the week drew to a close, tensions reached a breaking point. A group of survivors arrived at the shelter, fleeing from a nearby town that had been overrun by the aliens. Their stories were harrowing. They described machines that hunted humans like animals, tearing through buildings and leaving nothing behind. The newcomers were shaken, their faces pale and hollow. One woman clutched a blood-stained teddy bear, rocking back and forth as she whispered about the horrors she had witnessed. Seeing them reminded everyone of what was at stake. That night, Chris called a meeting to discuss their next steps. The air in the room was heavy with anticipation as he stood before the group. "Laura's time is almost up," he began, his voice firm but not unkind. "If her plan works, great. If not, we need to be ready to hit back hard." He paused, letting his words sink in. I won't lie to you. This isn't going to be easy. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that humans don't go down without a fight. So tomorrow, we decide. And then we act. Lavra felt a lump form in her throat as she looked around the room. These people were counting on her, trusting her to deliver anything that could give them hope. She glanced at Ryan, who gave her a small, encouraging nod. Then her eyes met Chris's, and she saw something unexpected in his expression. Not doubt, but determination. He believed in her, even if he didn't fully understand what she was trying to do. That realization strengthened her resolve. Whatever happened next, she would see it through. The following morning, Lavra made her final attempt to intercept the alien signals. She adjusted the satellite dish, fine-tuning it until the static cleared just enough to reveal faint patterns. Beneath, her heart raced as she realized she was onto something. With Ryan's help, she recorded the data and began analyzing it, searching for anything that resembled language or structure. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the occasional murmur of encouragement from Ryan. Finally, late in the afternoon, Lavra let out a triumphant cry. "I did it!" she exclaimed, holding up a sheet of paper covered in scribbled notes. "I cracked part of their code." The news spread quickly through the shelter, drawing cheers from the survivors. Lavra explained her findings to Chris and the others, detailing how the aliens referred to themselves as the Virith and viewed humans as pests standing in the way of their conquest. The revelation sparked a mix of anger and determination among the group. For the first time since the invasion began, they had a clear goal: to prove the Virith wrong. Humans weren't pests, they were fighters. And they weren't going anywhere. Chris wasted no time putting Laura's discovery to use. Together, they devised a bold plan to infiltrate a nearby Virith outpost and disable its central communications hub. It was a dangerous mission, one that required stealth, precision, and nerves of steel. Chris handpicked a team to carry it out, including Lavra, Mia, and Jake. As they prepared to leave, Chris delivered a speech that sent shivers down everyone's spines. "If we don't come back, you keep fighting," he said, his voice steady and resolute. "Because this is what happens when you enrage humans. We don't stop." With those words echoing in their ears, the team set out into the unknown, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The night was cold and silent as the team moved through the forest, their footsteps muffled by fallen leaves and soft earth. Lavra clutched a small device in her hand, its faint glow illuminating her face as she checked the map Ryan had created for them. The Virith outpost was located 5 miles away from Ridgewood, hidden deep within a cluster of abandoned warehouses on the outskirts of what used to be a bustling industrial zone. It wasn't heavily guarded compared to other locations, but that didn't mean it would be easy to infiltrate. Every step they took carried the weight of uncertainty, and the air around them felt thick with danger. Chris led the group, his rifle slung over his shoulder and his eyes scanning the shadows ahead. He moved with quiet confidence, years of military training guiding his every action. Behind him, Mia carried a bag filled with tools and explosives, her hands steady despite the tension gripping her chest. Jake brought up the rear, his sharp gaze darting between trees and rooftops, ready to take down any threat before it could reach the others. Lavra stayed close to Chris, her mind racing as she tried to focus on the mission. She had spent days deciphering the alien signals, but now her role shifted from scientist to soldier, and the change left her uneasy. As they approached the edge of the forest, the outline of the outpost came into view. Tall metal walls surrounded the compound, topped with jagged spikes that glinted under the moonlight. Strange machines patrolled the perimeter, their sleek designs hinting at advanced technology far beyond anything humanity possessed. Laura's heart sank as she realized how formidable their enemy truly was. These weren't just invaders. They were precision-engineered hunters, designed to dominate without mercy. But there was no turning back now. They had come too far to give up. Chris signaled for the group to stop, crouching low behind a cluster of rocks. "We need to move fast," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Those machines can detect movement, so stick close to cover and don't make sudden noises." Everyone nodded in agreement, their faces pale but determined. Lara tightened, her grip on the device in her hand, reminding herself why they were here. If they succeeded, they could cripple the Virith communications network, leaving their forces disorganized and vulnerable. Failure wasn't an option. Mia pulled out a small gadget she had built earlier, holding it up to the nearest security camera mounted on the wall. With a few quick adjustments, the camera's lens flickered and went dark. "That should buy us some time," she murmured, slipping the gadget back into her bag. Chris gave her a quick nod before motioning for the team to follow him. They crept along the base of the wall, staying in the shadows until they reached a narrow gap where the metal had been warped and bent. It looked like the result of a previous explosion, possibly from another resistance group. Whatever the cause, it provided the perfect entry point. One by one, they slipped through the gap and into the compound. The inside was eerily quiet, this only sound coming from the hum of alien machinery nearby. Lara glanced around, taking in the sight of strange symbols etched into the walls and glowing panels embedded in the ground. Everything about this place felt alien and wrong, as though it belonged to another world entirely, and in a way, it did. Her stomach churned as she thought about the implications of what they were doing. This wasn't just sabotage, it was humanity's last stand against an enemy that saw them as nothing more than insects to be crushed. They moved deeper into the outpost, following the map on Laura's device, until they reached a large building at the center of the compound. According to her calculations, this was where the main communication hub was located, but getting inside wouldn't be easy. 2 Virith drones stood guard outside the entrance, their metallic bodies gleaming in the dim light. Chris signaled for Jake to take position while he and Mia prepared to create a distraction. Lavra watched nervously as they executed their plan, drawing the drone's attention away from the door. Jake's aim was flawless. As soon as the drones turned their backs, he fired 2 quick shots, disabling them with pinpoint accuracy. The team wasted no time slipping inside, their hearts pounding as they entered the heart of the enemy's operations. The room was filled with glowing consoles and screens, displaying streams of data written in the same alien language Lara had been studying. She immediately set to work, connecting her device to one of the terminals and beginning the process of uploading a virus designed to disrupt the entire network. While Laura worked, the others kept watch, their weapons drawn and their senses on high alert. Mia wandered toward the back of the room, her curiosity getting the better of her. What she found there made her blood run cold. Rows of glass tanks lined the walls, each containing human bodies suspended in some kind of liquid. Some were unconscious, their faces pale and lifeless, while others appeared to have been dissected, their organs removed and replaced with strange mechanical components. Tears welled up in Nia's eyes as she realized the truth. The Virith weren't just attacking humans. They were experimenting on them, harvesting their bodies for resources. "Lavra," Mia called out, her voice trembling. "You need to see this." Lavra looked up from her work, her expression shifting from concentration to horror as she saw what Mia was pointing at. For a moment, she froze, overwhelmed by the sheer brutality of it all. Then anger surged through her veins, replacing fear with determination. This wasn't just an invasion, it was genocide. The Virith viewed humans as expendable, their lives meaningless compared to whatever twisted goals they were pursuing. And Lavra knew that stopping them wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about justice. "We're almost done," Lavra said, forcing herself to focus on the task at hand. Just a little longer. She typed furiously, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she finalized the upload. The virus spread quickly, infecting the system and causing the screens to flicker erratically. Alarms blared throughout the compound, signaling that their presence had been detected. Chris cursed under his breath, grabbing Laura's arm and pulling her toward the exit. "Let's go," he ordered, his tone urgent. "We've overstayed our welcome." The team retraced their steps, moving as quickly as they could without drawing unnecessary attention. But the Virith were already mobilizing, their reinforcements closing in from all directions. Jake covered their retreat, picking off enemies with precise shots as the others ran for cover. Bullets ricocheted off nearby surfaces, and the sound of explosions echoed in the distance. Lavra stumbled several times, her legs weak from exhaustion. But Chris kept her moving, refusing to let her fall behind. Then disaster struck. A burst of energy hit Jake square in the chest, sending him sprawling to the ground. Mia screamed his name, rushing to his side despite the chaos unfolding around him. Blood seeped through his shirt, and his breathing was shallow, but he managed a weak smile when he saw her. "Keep going," he rasped, his voice barely audible. "Don't stop for me." Tears streamed down Mia's face as she hesitated, torn between staying with him and completing the mission. Chris grabbed her arm, pulling her away. "He's right," he said firmly. "We have to finish this." With heavy hearts, the remaining members of the team pressed on, leaving Jake behind. Laura's mind raced as guilt and grief threatened to overwhelm her. They were so close, just a few more minutes, and the mission would be complete. But the cost was higher than any of them had anticipated. When they finally reached the outer wall, Chris stopped them, turning to face the pursuing Varith forces. "Go," he told Lara and Mia, his voice calm but resolute. "I'll hold them off." "No," Lara shouted, shaking her head. "We're not leaving you here." Chris smiled sadly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You've done enough," he said. "Now it's my turn." Before either of them could argue further, he turned and fired a volley of shots, drawing the aliens' attention toward him. Lavra wanted to scream, to fight back, but Mia dragged her away, pulling her through the gap in the wall and into the safety of the forest. Behind them, the sounds of battle grew fainter, until all that remained was silence. Lavra collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face as reality sank in. They had completed the mission, but at a terrible price. Chris and Jake were gone, sacrificed so the rest of them could live. Mia knelt beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders as they both mourned the loss of their friends. Through her grief, Lavra remembered Chris's final words. "Tell everyone, we're still here." And they were. Despite everything they had lost, humanity endured. The virus had done its job, crippling the Varith communications network and throwing their forces into disarray. Back at the shelter, news of the victory spread like wildfire, reigniting hope among the survivors. For the first time since the invasion began, people dared to believe that they might actually win. But Lavra knew the fight was far from over. The Virith wouldn't give up easily, and neither would humanity. Because this was what happened when you enrage humans, they became unstoppable. The aftermath of the mission weighed heavily on Lavra and Mia as they stumbled back to the shelter, their bodies battered and their spirits bruised. Every step felt like a struggle, not just physically but emotionally. The loss of Chris and Jake hung over them like a dark cloud, and the silence between them was thick with unspoken grief. Lavra kept replaying the events in her mind, the sound of Jake's voice as he urged them to keep going, the look in Chris's eyes as he stayed behind to face the enemy. She wanted to scream, to cry, to do anything to release the pain that gnawed at her insides, but she couldn't. Not yet. There were still people counting on her, survivors who needed hope now more than ever. When they finally reached the shelter, the others greeted them with a mix of relief and dread. They could see it in their faces, the toll the mission had taken. Alex ran to his sister, pulling her into a tight hug, while Ryan stood back, his expression unreadable. "Did it work?" he asked quietly, breaking the silence. Lavra nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "The virus is spreading through their network," she said. "It should cripple their communications for a while." Her words brought a murmur of excitement from the group, but it was short-lived. Everyone knew the cost of their victory, and the weight of that knowledge settled over them like a heavy blanket. That night, the survivors gathered around a small fire, sharing stories of those they had lost. Some spoke of family members who hadn't made it out of the initial attacks, while others remembered friends who had fallen during the resistance. Lavra listened silently, her hands clasped tightly together as tears streamed down her face. When it was her turn to speak, she hesitated, unsure of what to say. Finally, she took a deep breath and began to tell them about Chris and Jake, their bravery, their sacrifice, and the final moments they had shared. By the time she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the group. "Chris told me to tell everyone something before he stayed behind," she said softly. "He said, 'Tell everyone. We're still here.'" The words echoed in the silence, a reminder of why they were fighting. In the days that followed, the impact of the mission became clear. Reports from other survivor groups confirmed that the Virith forces were struggling. Without their communication network, attacks slowed, becoming less coordinated and more chaotic. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had the upper hand. Lavra threw herself into organizing global efforts to reclaim Earth, using the knowledge she had gained from the outpost to develop countermeasures against the Virith technology. Under her leadership, disparate factions united under a single banner: Project Reclamation. It wasn't easy. People were tired, scared, and divided, but Lara refused to give up. She reminded them of Chris's words, of the sacrifices made to get them this far. Ryan became her closest ally, helping her analyze data and coordinate strategies with other groups. Together, they worked tirelessly, often staying up late into the night to assure every detail was perfect. Mia took on a different role, channeling her grief into action by training new recruits and maintaining the equipment they had salvaged. Her hands moved quickly as she repaired weapons and modified tools, her focus unwavering. Alex joined the scouting team, venturing into abandoned towns to gather supplies and intelligence. Despite his youth, he proved to be resourceful and brave, earning the respect of even the most hardened survivors. As weeks turned into months, humanity began to strike back. Guerrilla tactics gave way to larger-scale operations, with coordinated assaults targeting key Virith strongholds. Each victory fueled their determination, pushing them closer to reclaiming their planet. Lavra played a crucial role in these efforts, using her understanding of the Virith language and technology to anticipate their moves. She developed a system for intercepting and decoding their signals, allowing the resistance to stay one step ahead. It was dangerous work, requiring long hours and constant vigilance, but Lavra didn't complain. She owed it to Chris, to Jake, and to everyone else who had given their lives for the cause. One evening, as Lavra pored over intercepted transmissions, she noticed something unusual, a pattern in the Virith's movements. At first, she thought it was a coincidence, but as she dug deeper, she realized it pointed to a single location, their mothership. The massive vessel orbited Earth, serving as the command center for the entire invasion force. If they could destroy it, they might deal a fatal blow to the Virith. Excited by the discovery, Lavra shared her findings with Ryan and Mia, who immediately recognized the significance. "If we take out the mothership, we can end this," Ryan said, his voice filled with cautious optimism. Lavra nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. The plan was risky, requiring precision and perfect timing. A team would need to infiltrate the ship, plant explosives in critical areas, and escape before detonation. But getting aboard wouldn't be easy. The mothership was heavily guarded, its defenses designed to repel any attack. Lavra proposed using cloaking technology scavenged from a downed Virith drone, hoping it would allow them to slip past the ship's sensors undetected. Ryan agreed to help modify the device, while Mia worked on creating compact explosives powerful enough to disable the ship's core systems. The rest of the group focused on gathering supplies and preparing for the mission. When everything was ready, Laura assembled a small team to carry out the operation. Alongside her were Ryan, Mia, and two other survivors, Ethan, a former pilot who had experience flying alien craft, and Anna, a medic skilled in emergency procedures. They knew the odds were against them, but none of them hesitated. This was their chance to turn the tide of the war, to honor the sacrifices of those who had come before them. As they prepared to leave, Laura addressed the group one last time. "We've lost so much," she said, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside her. "But we haven't lost our will to fight. Remember why we're doing this for. Chris, for Jake, for everyone who believed in us. Let's make them proud." The journey to the mothership was harrowing, each moment fraught with tension and uncertainty. Ethan piloted the stolen Virith shuttle, weaving through debris fields and avoiding patrols as they approached the massive vessel. Cloaked in invisibility, they slipped past the outer defenses and docked in a secluded bay. From there, the team moved cautiously, relying on Mia's blueprints and Laura's knowledge of Virith systems to navigate the labyrinthine corridors. Every step brought them closer to their goal, but also deeper into enemy territory. Inside the ship, the air was cold and sterile, the walls lined with glowing panels and strange symbols. Lavra felt a chill run down her spine as she realized how alien this place truly was. It wasn't just a machine. It was a living organism, pulsing with energy and purpose. She pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. With Ryan's help, she located the central control room where they planted the first set of explosives. Mia and Anna worked quickly to rig additional charges in secondary systems, ensuring maximum damage when the time came. Ethan stood guard, his weapon drawn and his eyes scanning for threats. As they worked, alarms began to blare, signaling that their presence had been detected. Virith soldiers swarmed the area, forcing the team to fight their way back to the docking bay. Bullets ricocheted off metal walls, and the sound of explosions echoed through the corridors. Laura's heart raced as she ran, clutching the detonator tightly in her hand. They reached the shuttle just as the first wave of enemies closed in. Ethan fired up the engines, lifting off just as the bay doors sealed behind them. Outside, the mothership loomed large against the blackness of space, its surface alive with flashes of light. "Now or never," Lavra whispered, pressing the button on the detonator. The ship erupted in a brilliant explosion, sending shockwaves rippling through the void. Debris scattered in all directions, and the once mighty vessel disintegrated before their eyes. Tears streamed down Laura's face as she watched the spectacle unfold, a mixture of relief and sorrow washing over her. They had done it. They had struck a decisive blow against the invaders. But the cost had been high, and the scars would remain for a long time. Back on Earth, news of the victory spread quickly, igniting celebrations among the survivors. Fires burned brightly in the night as people danced and sang, their voices carrying hope for the first time in months. Lavra stood apart from the festivities, gazing up at the stars. She thought about Chris and Jake, about all the lives lost in the fight to reclaim their world. Humanity had endured, proving itself resilient in the face of unimaginable odds. And though the road ahead would be long and difficult, Lavra knew one thing for certain. This was what happened when you enrage. Humans, they became unstoppable. The destruction of the Virith mothership marked a turning point in humanity's fight for survival. The invaders, once an unstoppable force, were now scattered and disorganized. Their fleets retreated from Earth's orbit, fleeing into the depths of space as their remaining ships struggled to regroup. For the first time in months, the skies above Ridgewood were clear, free from the ominous hum of alien engines and the glow of energy weapons. The survivors emerged from their shelters, blinking in the sunlight, unsure of what to do next. It was over, at least for now, but the scars ran deep, etched into the land and the hearts of those who remained. Lavra stood on a hill overlooking the town, her arms crossed tightly against the chill in the air. Behind her, Mia approached quietly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We did it," Mia said softly, her voice tinged with both relief and sadness. Lavra nodded, but didn't respond right away. She couldn't bring herself to celebrate. Not yet. Too much had been lost, too many lives sacrificed to reach this moment. Chris, Jake, and countless others had given everything so that humanity could endure. The victory felt hollow without them, a bittersweet reminder of the price they had paid. As the days passed, the survivors began the long process of rebuilding. Homes were patched together from salvaged materials. Fields were cleared of debris, and crops were planted in the hope of a new harvest. Life slowly returned to Ridgewood, though it was far from what it had been before the invasion. The town bore the marks of war-burnt-out buildings, cracked roads, and empty spaces where families had once lived. But amidst the ruins, there was also resilience. People worked side by side, sharing food, tools, and stories of survival. They mourned their losses, but refused to let grief define them. This was their home, and they were determined to reclaim it. Lavra threw herself into organizing global recovery efforts, using her position as the leader of Project Reclamation to coordinate with other survivor groups. Communication networks were re-established, linking communities across continents and allowing them to share resources and knowledge. Scientists and engineers collaborated to study the remnants of Virith technology, reverse engineering it to improve human defenses and prepare for any future threats. It wasn't easy. Many systems were damaged beyond repair, and understanding the aliens' advanced designs required patience and ingenuity, but progress was steady. Humanity was learning, adapting, and growing stronger with each passing day. Ryan remained by Laura's side, offering support and guidance as she navigated the challenges of leadership. Together, they pored over data collected during the war, analyzing patterns in the Virith's behavior and strategies. Their goal was simple: to ensure that Earth would never be caught off guard again. If they come back, and they might, we need to be ready, Ryan said one evening as they sat together in the makeshift lab. Laura nodded, her expression thoughtful. She knew he was right. The Virith may have fled, but their motives remained unclear. Why had they targeted Earth? What drove their relentless expansion? These questions haunted her, fueling her determination to uncover the truth. Mia focused her energy on helping the younger survivors, teaching them skills they would need to thrive in the post-war world. She showed them how to repair machinery, grow food, and defend themselves, instilling in them a sense of purpose and responsibility. Her students admired her quiet strength, often seeking her advice when faced with difficult decisions. Among them was Alex, who had grown more confident since joining the resistance. He no longer hesitated to speak up during meetings or volunteer for dangerous missions, earning the respect of even the most seasoned fighters. Seeing him mature filled Laura with pride, though it also reminded her of the burden they all carried. The next generation would inherit a world shaped by conflict, and it was their duty to leave it better than they found it. Despite the progress being made, Reminders of the war lingered everywhere. In Ridgewood, a memorial was erected near the center of town, honoring those who had given their lives during the invasion. Names were carved into stone tablets, accompanied by messages of gratitude and remembrance. Lavra visited the site often, sitting quietly as she traced the letters with her fingers. Each name brought back memories: Chris's unwavering courage, Jake's quiet determination, the countless faces of strangers whose sacrifices had helped turn the tide. She whispered their names aloud sometimes, as if speaking them could keep their spirits alive. One morning, as Lavra walked through the town square, she noticed a group of children playing nearby. They laughed and shouted, chasing each other around piles of rubble that had become makeshift playgrounds. Watching them, Lavra felt a flicker of hope. These kids had known only hardship and loss, yet they still found joy in the smallest things: a sunny day, a shared meal, a game with friends. Their laughter echoed through the streets, a sound that hadn't been heard in months. It reminded her why they had fought so hard, why they continued to rebuild despite the odds. Humanity wasn't defined by its suffering. It was defined by its ability to rise above it. Later that afternoon, Lavra called a meeting with the leaders of Project Reclamation. The group gathered in the largest building in town, a former warehouse repurposed as a community center. Maps and charts covered the walls, detailing plans for infrastructure repairs, resource distribution, and defense strategies. Lavra stood at the front of the room, her voice calm but firm as she addressed the assembly. "We've come a long way," she began, "but our work is far from finished. The Virith are gone for now, but we can't afford to lower our guard. We need to fortify our defenses, expand our research, and prepare for whatever comes next." Her words resonated with everyone present. They understood the stakes, having lived through the horrors of invasion. No one wanted to see Earth fall, victim to another attack. Ideas flowed freely as the group discussed ways to strengthen their position. Some suggested building early warning systems to detect incoming threats, while others advocated for creating orbital defenses capable of intercepting enemy ships. Lavra listened carefully, weighing each proposal before making decisions. By the end of the meeting, a clear plan had emerged, one that balanced immediate needs with long-term goals. As night fell, Lavra climbed the hill once more, gazing out at the horizon. The stars twinkled faintly in the distance, their light a comforting presence after months of fear and uncertainty. She thought about the Virith, wondering where they had gone and whether they would return. Part of her hoped they wouldn't. Earth had suffered enough, but another part knew that humanity couldn't rely on luck alone. If the invaders came back, they would find a planet united, its people prepared to defend their home at any cost. Behind her, footsteps crunched softly against the dry grass. Mia joined her, standing silently as they looked out over the town below. "Do you think we'll ever really be safe?" Mia asked after a while, her tone reflective. Lavra considered the question, choosing her words carefully. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I do know this: we're stronger now than we were before. We've learned how to fight, how to adapt, and how to stand together. That's something no one can take away from us." Mia smiled faintly, nodding in agreement. Together, they watched as Ridgewood glowed softly under the moonlight, a testament to the resilience of its people. This was what happened when you enrage humans. They didn't give up. They didn't falter. Instead, they rose to meet the challenge, drawing strength from their pain and unity from their shared purpose. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but Lavra believed in humanity's ability to endure. After all, they had already proven that they could face the impossible and triumph.